Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to when and wherever you are when you're watching this. Uh, I feel the need to make this kind of a video because of the different kinds of things that have been happening in my country ever since the COVID-19 crisis started. Just today, I read a story in the CBC about how Alberta has implemented a new kind of set of restrictions. About a week ago, I remember reading stories about how Albertans were protesting the draconian mandates from the health officials there, and I think the mayor or somebody, another a political figure, was upset about it more or less, and had voiced that publicly. And so it seems very interesting that a brand new set of even more restrictive mandates would come in about a week or so later. And it just seemed a little convenient for me, and so it bothered me a lot, especially when I read through the story and I read the kinds of restrictions that Albertans will be facing, only to think that this could actually come into Ontario. We've seen a lot of movements to try to mandate different things in different levels of our lives based around this virus and the so-called threat of this virus, especially based on the mainstream media and other kinds of health officials that have sold us this narrative for 10 months now. What was a 2-week flatten the curve, do what you can, has turned into almost a year-long marathon. And even with all the restrictions that they placed on businesses to allow them to open up, according to the health officials, everything is surging. And the only way now forward is to restrict our lives entirely and force us to wear masks, and potentially, through the restriction of our movements and our associations, actually force us to take a vaccine, an experimental one. From what I understand, is an RNA vaccine. This is something that is a DNA type of vaccine. I'm not gonna sit here and try to say that I'm educated enough to tell what the difference is. Only that in my lifetime, and I'm 32 years old, I've never seen anything like this happen before. And so just coming back to the way that this lockdown looks to me, from what I can see, the virus has not been as bad as they tried to tell us. People that got the virus, that got sick, generally got over it. A small minority of them had some symptoms, and a hyper minority of them ended up in the hospital, and with some of them dying. Seems to be the case across the board for every single type of virus or infection or anything that the human body and the immune system that we have might face down. And so when I think about how this kind of lockdown is looking in the face of the evidence for what we've seen as just humans within our everyday lives, being told that this is a pandemic that's of biblical proportions, that will destroy our human race, in the face of the lack of evidence to support all these claims, a restrictive lockdown like the one I'm seeing in Alberta, and just even the lockdowns that we're facing right now, can seem like nothing more than tyrannical. And it's a tyranny of fear. Do you ever think it's kind of interesting how the government and the health officials haven't mandated vitamins to be dispersed freely to people? We've seen studies where vitamin C and vitamin D seems to be a really, really good way to have a natural way to fight this virus, or healthy eating lifestyles that we should all be adopting in the face of the fact that something like this happened, and it seemed to have been a strong wind, more or less, that kind of blew certain people over that you just never would have expected to get sick? Or how come they didn't mandate the fact that everybody should be working out and being healthier in general, practicing more cardiovascular exercises? Instead, all they did was build every single policy controlling our lives around fear. It really just leaves me wondering, what kind of evil is being perpetrated against us now? It doesn't leave me feeling any amount of hopeful. Not the vaccine that they're trying to sell us, locking everything down again, limiting our movements. All of it leaves me feeling distressed. It leaves me feeling anxious, worried. The people of Alberta have to wear masks everywhere. Why? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, most people getting this virus and they are getting over it. We should be taking this head on. We shouldn't be running and hiding away and giving all our freedom to all of our freedoms and control in our government over to these so-called health officials now that are passing overnight mandates that end up governing everything that we do and destroying our lives and freedoms. I don't know. I felt like after I read that story that somebody has to be saying this. I know that YouTube is going to start taking down any dissenting videos around the COVID-19 topic, around any election issues for any country probably. And that it's going to be harder and harder to find the truth in things. And I just wanted to just say how I think that this is evil, that this kind of actions from the government and the health officials is just evil. They're manipulating us based on our fear, and they're using it against us in the worst kind of ways, through our good nature. I don't want to hurt anybody, and I know most of you don't want to hurt anybody. And this is part of the game that they're playing against us. I hope the people of Alberta don't follow these mandates. I hope if they come here, I'm not going to follow them. I encourage every other Canadian, every other freedom-loving Canadian to not follow them as well. We are being moved against. And any infringement on our freedoms should cause immediate reaction against that. We should be pushing back against this right away. I imagine the people in any province, in any state, in any country, if they were given the facts about what we know so far, without spin, without political bias, without fear, that they would make the best decision for themselves and their families. And that would be the best way to go about dealing with this. Once we give away our freedoms to the government for these temporarily mandatory kinds of mandates, they will never be temporary. They will be permanent. Even the lowest code, the green or whatever it is, on the scale of codes for our life in existence, even the lowest one is not free. When do you and I go back to being free? Because as far as I can see, we have less and less freedom every day. And all of it is built around fear. And they're making us afraid of each other. It'll be harder and harder for us to come together on things if we spend more and more time apart from each other. So, I don't have exactly a clear message with this video. I just want people to think about the things that I'm talking about in it. Think about this virus, how this story played out from the beginning, how 2 weeks turned into a year and potentially even more. We don't even know. How just simple acts of kindness, being courteous to those that may be potentially at risk, turned into a full-blown control of every single thing that you're doing in your life. I mean, everything. There will be apps coming out soon that will govern your movements and, allow you to do things based on your adherence to certain health mandates. And I can't help but feel like this is turning more and more Orwellian, if that's the right kind of term, where we just don't have the freedom, just the freedom to be free, and we don't have the free mind to assess reality and make our own decisions anymore, where our minds are not free, where we've been so subverted by fear and by propaganda from our government and the media, because in Canada it's actually the same thing in some cases, that we can never get away from this. We can never ever break free from the chains on our minds and our bodies. They want to mandate this vaccine directly and indirectly in many ways. If they limit your movements and associations in this country based on whether or not you've had an experimental vaccine, that is mandating the vaccine. They are playing so nice in the most evil and insidious way by saying that it's in everyone's best interest that they do this. And the sooner everybody starts playing along, the sooner everybody can start going back to normal again. It's just the most evil kind of thing to me. That they would play nice like this and smile in our faces as they told us more and more we would have to negotiate our freedom back. And any rational person would never have to be sold the truth about a virus being a pandemic, because the evidence would be all around us. But the evidence is only in the form of the media, and the evidence is in the form of the consistent draconian mandates passed by health officials, and the passive acceptance of our government and a lot of other people to these mandates. And just that you need to just accept this. So I guess my message is just be a real individual. Try to look at what's been happening and not be afraid of the idea that you may have been duped, because that's the worst kind of thing, because nobody wants to feel inconsistent. Nobody wants to feel stupid, that you went along with something that may not have been entirely true. Truthfully, it's frightening to see how many people have let go of their rights so quickly in the face of something that has almost no evidence to support how dangerous and how bad they're saying it is. So, the story bothered me, and I hope it bothers other people enough too to start speaking out like this, start expressing how this is making them feel. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm exactly right about everything, and I'm not saying that you should all even agree with me. I just hope that if you watch this, that it leaves you feeling like the same way it leaves me feeling, that there's something seriously wrong with this situation. And that more and more, it's starting to seem evil, insidious, and just like the worst kind of nightmare that you could imagine from the book in 1984. That this situation may have been played against us, and that we were taken advantage of through things like our good nature. So I hope that the people in Alberta can shrug off this tyranny, and I hope that the rest of the country can come to see this kind of tyranny for what it is and shrug it off as well. Because it will take a day. It will take a day of people not wearing masks, and most of these mandates, which are not laws, mandates, will disappear overnight as the power that they thought they had, these health officials, just simply dissipates. The power is in us. And it's time for us to be individuals again and to not be afraid. That's my message. Don't be afraid.